You're listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. I am your host, Al Mega, CEO of Comic Crusaders and Undercover Capes. In this show, I'm sitting down with creators from all walks of life to talk about inspiration, process, the lessons they've learned, and a whole lot more. Wepa, familia, welcome to another high-octane episode of the Comic Crusaders podcast. I'm your boy, Al Mega, the one and only, of course. You know what it is, Comic Crusaders is in the building today, and today we're also going to be joined by a storyteller who made the leap from journalist to comic book scribe. He's leaving his bylines behind to blaze across the multiverse of kick-ass girls and sensitive boys. He's rocked pages for DC, IDW, Boom Studios, Tie-In, and Dark Horse. You know, I'm talking about a killer lineup, right? Jesus. And today, we're diving into two, that's right. I did like the bromance just now, right? Two powerful projects right now he's going to be dropping. First up is The Last Witch, Volume 2, right? Blood and Betrayal from Boom Studios via Boombox. And, of course, Fela, Music is the Weapon, which is going to be an epic original graphic novel being released by Harper Collins this fall, and via the Amistad imprint. Let's get it done first. We're about to just kick some ass. So strap in, Crusaders, because Conor McCreery is in the building. Homie. Welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. That is an intro. That is some energy. I'm gonna match that energy. We're gonna rock this house.
Let's bring the sazon, baby. Let's make some spices right now. Ooh,
let's do it.
Let's go. Let's
do it. Let's bring it.
So welcome to the show. Like I said, this is the mayhem. You're bringing some magic. You're bringing some music. You bringing that mayhem because you bringing all of you got so many things going on, brother. And it's fantastic to see a creator like yourself. Going from death threats. You had to leave because it's either get killed or get into comic books. And I think you made the right choice. And thank you for that. You know what I mean? Hey, but we're gonna talk about that journey right now, bro. Because again, I am excited. Like, that's kind of crazy. Like, people always told me I should be a journalist. When I was in high school, I had teachers encouraging me. They're like, "Yo, I like how you write. You write no nonsense." I was doing a lot of creative writing, and but my shit was not creative writing. I had to go straight to the point, talk shit. And they liked it. That you should do that. But it's funny enough, right? How years later, the podcast comes about, then I wind up doing this instead.
It's true.
Thank you, Miss Hamill. Right? Yeah, Miss Hamill, that was my dean, and thank you. She did lay that seed in me, so thank you to her.
She was smart. She was smart. She's a smart lady, man. Because it's true, man. Because journalism is very much about, and I feel like some of my strengths as a writer for comics comes from my journalism background in terms of trying to write punchy dialogue, right? Or if it's a longer speech, is making sure that every sentence.
But it's real life experience too.
Yeah,
because you dig in as a journalist, you're doing some research, you're finding things out. Sometimes you got to deal with people when you do research. For example,
and I was a broadcaster.
And sometimes it's not fun.
Yeah, and I was a broadcast journalist. Like my one of my first gigs in journalism was I was the guy who would write the news stories that the anchors would do a 3-minute break. Okay. And I worked in business news, so I had to distill these often complicated economics or business stories into an 18 or 21 second pop. And so every line's got to be sharp and it's got to be easy to say because you've got an anchor who's got to be able to read it and hit it. So you've got to make sure that everything is clear. And so I definitely learned a lot. We did have a couple of anchors who were the Ron Burgundy types, where if you put Steakhouse yourself San Diego, they would have read it. But
I love it. I love it.
You got to be careful. But no, it was great. It was a great training.
So you're telling me you never had that type of fun with one of those? Did you ever?
I mean, every once in a while we would have some fun with. There was one company that was called Compton Petroleum, and so anytime they were in the news and they were having a bad day, it was investors are getting straight out of Compton. We would do little things like that, which we would have fun with. But that's that was about it because I wanted to keep my job. I didn't want to have some anchor coming out of the news studio, walking over and bashing me over the head, which did happen early in my career. I worked in finance very briefly.
Did you have a kick-ass moment or something?
And I had a guy.
Wanted. That was Wanted, right? Wanted.
Wanted. I had a guy come up to me in the office, and he was furious with me for something that was really ridiculous. and he rolled up a big annual report, and he started hitting me over the head.
No way! Like you were done. So some shit. Like
he was just hitting me over the head.
Wait, on the Benny Hill type, what? Oh my god!
Well, he was wailing, and he was a short gentleman, and he's hitting me, and I was 18 or 19, like my first job, and he's wailing me, and he's furious at me, and I'm kind of sitting there being like, this is ridiculous. And finally, after like 5 or 6, I'm like, all right, like I may be the junior guy here, and so I just stood up, and I'm about 6 feet tall. I'm not like an intimidating gentleman, but he was probably 5'2".
Yeah, my height helps.
And I just stood up, and I kind of looked at him, and he just kind of like told me to fuck off and stormed back to his desk.
He said, "Oh shit, oops."
Yeah, and that's so that was one of my little clues that maybe that wasn't the industry for me.
Yeah, bro, you a better man than I, because you try to hit me. Listen, bro, I'm losing my job that day. We're both losing our jobs anyway. So here we go. But from breaking those stories and then out breaking panels, if you will, how that journalist in you did wind up going into this color world of comic books. What really led to that?
I mean, it's kind of funny actually that the comics almost weirdly led me to the journalism. So I went to school. I had a weird mix. I went to school I had a business degree, but a minor in theater because I love being creative. But I had that thing in the back of my head that I think a lot of people who are creative have, which is, well, I got to have something practical as a fallback. In retrospect, taking some business classes was actually not a bad idea. It actually helped. I've been told throughout my career that the way I put together pitch decks or marketing plans, like people are like, wow, like I really appreciate this. So there was value there. But so I got out of school and I went to a film academy in New York City. So I made a couple of short films. Then I started working for film companies in Canada. And then myself and my buddy Anthony Delcall, before we did Kill Shakespeare, we actually created a kids TV show.
I know Anthony.
It got optioned. It didn't get made, but it got optioned. But while it was in the process, I was like, all right, I gotta quit my film job. I gotta get like a part-time, like a service job, so I can quit at any moment because like Hollywood's gonna call. I'm gonna be writing the scripts. And so I started working at a comic shop, the same comic shop I used to love to go to when I was a kid. And
all right, so wait, let's talk about those early origins then.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do that early origin then. So let's think back to that childhood and the early origins of your geekdom. What was the first thing that you ever actually fell in love with in fandom overall?
I mean, it's the first. You know what? Okay, I think the first thing I totally fell in love with is actually a huge influence on The Last Witch. Was The Secret of NIMH. I don't know if you remember that movie, The Secret of NIMH, Miss Brisby.
Do you see me, sir? Do you see this?
Okay.
My age, and of course, I'm that 80s kid. Of course, I'm gonna watch something like The Secret of NIMH. We had the 80s. We had some top-notch animation.
We did.
And I want to say something here before we even continue this. I don't know if you've seen the new Looney Tunes movie that came out that almost got canceled, but they somehow saved it in its release. They go back to 2D animation, and I just want to say thank you for doing even that. Like, I'm tired of the CGI, all that. Let's go back to human talent and creating that beautiful 2D. And like, yo, what a phenomenal job. I hope you see it.
Oh, actually, I was just there's where I'm actually living in France right now in a little town called Annecy, and they've got the world's biggest animation festival. So last week I was just watching animation from all over the globe. I watched this really awesome co-pro between France and Canada and Cote d'Ivoire about like child soldiers. There was so much good stuff. But to get back to the question you were talking about, so yeah, it was Secret of NIMH. That story stuck with me. It scared the hell out of me. I loved it. I remember this is how old I am. I remember when my parents had rented a cottage outside of the city because I grew up in Toronto, and there was a Laserdisc player was in the cottage.
He said a Laserdisc. Oh my God.
And so we went to the corner store, and like the only Laserdisc that was there that was appropriate, because me and my brother were probably 7 and 11 or whatever, was The Secret of NIMH, which I had seen before. And so we had the Laserdisc Secret of NIMH. Back then you rented them for a week. And every day at lunch, every kid on the beach would come to our place and we would watch Secret of NIMH.
Oh, you were the cool kids, huh?
Oh, yeah. And I think my dad was like, Jesus, I've made such a horrible mistake. Because everybody, he's more vacation, right?
He must hate this movie. He must hate this movie.
He says like he just wanted vacation. And every lunchtime, there's like 12 kids, and him and my mom are making like sandwiches for the entire fucking like.
Because what am I, butler maid here? What's going on?
Exactly, right? Like but yeah, The Secret of NIMH was the first one. That one really stuck with me, and it ended up being a huge influence on The Last Witch in terms of like the idea of the tone and the idea. That really taught me a lesson that kids will take what they're ready for, right? So you don't have to really worry about giving them too much, because if it's too much for them, they'll just tune out. They won't bring it in. But you can give them a lot, because The Secret of NIMH is scary. It is intense. You really are terrified throughout the story that your heroes are going to die.
Yeah, and because the animation itself is not a very bright animation. So it's told in some dark tones that, it really sets the mood.
It's a horror movie.
Yeah, it sets really the mood, baby.
Yeah, it's so good. So that was the very first thing. And then from there, of course, it's Star Wars. Empire Strikes Back comes out. I think I'm 7 when it comes out, 6 or 7. We go to see, my parents took me to see it in the theaters.
Oh, that's cool.
Right.
See, my parents were not sci-fi fans, so they were horror fans and action fans. So my movie experience, because at 5 years old, my first horror movie was Hell Night with Linda Blair. And then then they went to the Rocky movies, Rambo movies, Cobra, all Sylvester Stallone type shit, Clint Eastwood, Deadpool, that's that shit in the movie theater, things like that. That's what they like. So that's what I was stuck. I never had the opportunity to get into sci-fi until the VCR.
Oh yes, the VCR. You had to make the big choice of beta or VHS. Which way were we
going? VHS, baby. We were VHS, and man, our first. You know what's crazy? Our first movie. I will remember this. Great memory. Because they just opened a video store up around the corner from my hood in Brooklyn. It's the first video store in the hood. Mom and pop type style.
Right.
We just got the VCR. Our first movie ever was Lethal Weapon.
Oh.
On tape, yeah.
Oh, man.
Not the first one I ever watched on tape, because my titi had this in Brooklyn. So the first actual movie I ever watched on videotape, I shouldn't have watched this shit either as a kid. And it terrified me. Scarface. The Al Pacino one. When I saw that fucking scene in the bathroom with the chainsaw, I ran out the room. I said, "Oh my god!" As a kid, that's real. Out of me.
Right? Like that's real. That's intense. That's not some guy with knives on his fingers haunting your dreams.
No.
Yeah, like, that stuff happens. That's happening around the corner from me, maybe.
Oh yeah, boy, that shit fucking scared the shit out of me. But yeah, I love that movie. Thank you, Titi.
Yeah. So it was, Secret of NIMH, it was Star Wars. And then it's funny, people are like, oh, when did you I read comics as a kid. I loved Spider-Man. I loved Nightcrawler from the X-Men. I was, Canadian, so I would read Alpha Flight. I liked Excalibur. Like that was a lot of my, I was more a Marvel guy than DC.
Hey. That's good. No, hey. But,
then Batman, but there's always a few classic Batmans that make it, because Batman was just,
what was it about Alpha Flight? I want to know about this, because again, I'm here from the States, and you're talking about that love. I mean, I'm never going to say they're a whack team, because they do look dope, but it's not something I like some of the characters as individuals, like Vindicator and shit. But what was it? Talk to me.
It's kind of, honestly, man, it's kind of representation, right? Like it's that old story that you hear, people talk about, and dumbass is dismissed, but it's the idea of seeing yourself, right? And when you get to see yourself, I mean, I think that's one of the things where.
So who was you on the team? Don't tell me it was Puck. You being.
I did like Puck, man. I like Puck because he was funny. I like a funny character, right? I was never going to be. I really liked. I like North Star. I thought that was pretty cool. I love Sasquatch, right? He's awesome. Vindicator was interesting. I remember that one was interesting because when I got
part of the Weapon X program,
Guardian was gone. Guardian was gone, and so it was it's a female leader of the team, and that was not something like that you took for granted. It was different. The idea that this team was led by a woman, and everybody respected her, and she was trying to fill the shoes of her husband, but it wasn't like she thought her husband would think she wasn't good enough. There was none of that misogynistic bullshit. She knew that he would be like, "I've got your back," but it was just the enormous pressure of having to be a leader. And I was looking back, you're like, shit, that book was ahead of its time in some ways, right?
Because that was an amazing creative team behind it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Claremont, right? Yeah, it's like, and you look at the same thing with Storm when she takes over the X-Men at a certain point, right? And she, heavy is the crown, right? And so that one, those ones really stuck with me. I love Nightcrawler just because I love Nightcrawler and Spider-Man because I love these characters who were bouncing around. They were funny. They were heroes. They could kick ass if they needed. Like one of my favorite all-time books was a Spider-Man versus Wolverine.
Oh, bro.
All my friends got so mad.
Oh, bro. I say great memory. I look at it. We're vibing here. That's a great memory for me too. Because that was one of the first times I found out that my aunt's husband had a nephew that collected comics. So I went one day to her house and I saw this white long box. I didn't know what was in there. I said, "What is that?" She goes, "Comic book." I said, "What?" I opened it, and the first one I pulled out was that Spider-Man versus Wolverine. Well, my eyes popped out my head. I said, "What? They're fighting? They're fighting?" And then, you know what was the follow-up when I took out that box? The reprint of the first appearance of Wolverine.
Oh, nice.
So I said, "Oh, what the fuck is this?" Then when this guy saw me reading his comic books, he of course got a little mad. He goes, "Why the fuck are you touching my books?"
Right.
I said, Titi said it was okay. I'm taking care of them. I have some at home. I take care of them. And we know what's small. I did have, and I knew how to take care of. So I'm taking care of them. Okay, he's okay. So he's noticed. He said, "Okay, cool." Then he started explaining to me, bro. He put me on to then a whole world from there for me, outside of my Christ Star, because that was my first combo. So that one you see up there on the wall, that's my very first still. Listen, if I took it out that thing, it would probably fucking melt.
Just like blow.
But that's my historic book. What was your historic book?
You know what? That's funny. You just mentioned that. Now I'm trying to think what my first one is. I'm sure it was a Spider-Man. I'm not sure if this was the first, but I remember it was the first time I was really pissed off with comics. Was because it was, and it wasn't anything that was in the comic. It was Spider-Man. It was the Gang Wars series.
Oh my god, I love that fucking series with the rose and all. You crazy? Yeah. I love that.
I love same thing. So I loved it. But the problem was back then, of course, comic shops, they didn't really exist that much, right?
Yeah, you
had to go. Yeah. You went to the basically like the drugstore, and they got the spinner rack. And like you don't know who's like, maybe you're lucky and the person who's actually running the comics in the drugstore knows something, gives a shit, and makes sure they've got them out. But I remember I got like number 1, number 3,
breaking your heart.
I never got 2, I never got 5. Still to this day, like I've refused to go into Wikipedia because I'm like, I don't want to know. I have my own imagination of how it ended.
You got your own feelings.
Oh yeah. I love that. I mean,
bro, I love that you mentioned that. That was also one of my early favorites, but because of him, my aunt and nephew, if you will, I was able to read all of those. So I had some pieces, but when I would go to his, look, the missing pieces that I can't buy. But then he put me on this. Listen, stop touching my shit. I'm gonna show you where to go. You could get like 4 comic books for $1 in a bag. I said, really? Right. So then. I used to figure out, how do I earn money? I said, Titi, I hope you do laundry. How much? $5. All right, bet. So, at 4
you're like that's 20 comics. Yeah, 15 if I'm going to buy myself a Coke and a chocolate bar.
No, I definitely do, because I would spend $3 because downstairs was the greatest candy store you ever seen in your life. So you need it, you get your Marta, your soda, and your $1 worth of candy when $1 actually bought at least 20 pieces.
Yes. And you got 12 comic books and you're just like sitting in a room.
Yo, fucking heaven, bro.
That's my day.
Salute to those older folks. Please do that. We live those days. We need to have that, a national geek out there. I swear to God. We need to do that. All right. So let's get into this, back into this. We're having fun, but now let's get back into the theme here, because when you first stepped into comics, did it feel like freedom or chaos to you? Was it just like another deadline when you stepped into this world?
I think it felt a little bit more freedom, right? Because I mean, the job I had in journalism, one of the jobs, like I was writing a newscast every half hour, so it was intense. Like it was every day. I would get every day I would get to the station at like 4:30 in the morning. I would write my ass off till about 6:30. then I would get all this other shit done. We would go live to air at 7, and every half hour I had to have 5 or 6 news stories. So you had to have a bunch.
What?
Right, and then you had to try to freshen them up because
I want to tell people this is that before the age of AI, where right now people would say, "Well, you could use AI." No, man.
Well, you could if you want. And also, if you're waiting for AI to, because the problem is you're broadcasting this, and people are making. The thing about business news is people are making investment decisions based on what they're hearing and seeing. Right, at least some people are. So
you're right.
You can't be wrong. You can't have AI come back and be like, whoops, sorry, right? You're like, so that from that perspective, getting into comics where you're like, oh, I have to have 30 pages every like 3 weeks, I guess, if you really want to stay ahead of the art. Yeah. Oh man, that was nothing, right? That was, it was a different sort of stress. But again, I had a background. I'd written a teleplay. That I'd written the pilot of this kid's TV show. I'd written actually a feature film, an animated feature film that I got money from the Canadian government. And I found a company that was really excited. They were going to make it. Their second feature film was going to be this comic or this story I wrote with a buddy of mine called Bike Man. And then they went bankrupt with their first movie, right? From this comics felt like. It had the episodic nature of TV, which I was a little bit familiar with, but you just didn't have any constraints. The first series I did was this book called Kill Shakespeare. I did with Anthony Delcall and Andy Belanger. And one of the reasons we did it as comics was because we're like, whatever we imagine, it can be created. There's no budget, right? There's no, I want hundreds, I want 2 massive armies fighting. All right, well, that's just making sure that your artist is down to do that. And then you've given them the headspace, and probably if you're going to make them draw, 500 horses over, 30 pages of a book, you better make sure you got a couple of things in there that they are like super excited to draw, so that as they're drawing this horse, they're not like, I'm going to murder everybody. And it's funny because if you look in Kill Shakespeare, one of the issues, there's a scene set in a graveyard. And if you really look closely, you get your magnifying glass out, you can find that both me and Anthony are dead in that graveyard. Anthony was just like, I'm so pissed off with these guys. I don't even know what it was, but he murdered us, put us in that graveyard. So,
oh damn, bro.
So yeah, so I mean, comics felt like it's such an amazing medium because again, it's like whatever you can think of, and more than that, because it's a bit of a lower stakes medium, people are willing to let you try things, right? Like you hear the horror stories of people in film and TV who are, they're all very talented writers and creators and actors, but you get typecast. You're a comedian. You write comic stuff. You're the horror guy. And it takes people their whole careers, and sometimes it never happens, for them to be like, yeah, sure, I wrote this amazing horror movie, but I've got a rom-com, right? Yeah. I've got like the best rom-com ever sitting there. And people are like, no, you're the fucking horror guy. Do your horror shit.
Doesn't that suck?
In comics you can bounce forever.
Yeah, it sucks that when you get that typecast, that's the kind of the word, right? And it sucks. So, why should you be held into a box? This is why I like seeing the homie, the comedian, what is it, Jordan Peele, right? That's doing horror. He's a comedian, but now he's also a horror maker. So, okay, so look at that. I mean, now you telling me you can't be that person, the content that you deliver? Get the hell out of here, man. Allow that creativity because, horror is humor is horror, or it could be action. I mean, funny scenarios. I mean, everything really blends if you really think about it.
I mean, you look at horror and comedy, it's like you just kind of get off the highway to a slightly different spot, right? Like all this, the setups are kind of the same in the sense of you're putting somebody into an uncomfortable space.
Yeah,
the comedy takes you into a place, but I mean, Jordan Peele is a great example in terms of like he's incredibly talented, right? He was part of, one half of arguably one of the 4 or 5 best comedic duos of the last 20, 30 years. Yeah, and it turns out you look at his first movie, right? And you're like, that was a genius movie.
It was
right?
a badass flick, yeah, bro.
How good he had to be to get that chance. And I mean, I think I'm pretty good, but I'm no freaking Jordan Peele, right? But comics still lets me.
Not yet. Maybe you are. It's just not the right person has found you.
But comics has let me. Comics let me do like Kill Shakespeare was well respected. I was able to do Assassin's Creed out of that, and Adventure Time, and regular show. The Last Witch is a really good book. I'm really proud of it. This Fela book is a really good book. I've got some other stuff, but none of them have been massive successes the way sort of Get Out was. But yet comics is, just by the virtue of it's not as much money to do these things, you get chances. And I think that's the thing that's amazing about comics is if if I'm not sure who would be listening to this podcast who's not a comics person, but if you're trying to get someone into comics, it's like whatever story you like is being told in the comics format. And it's being told in a way that is more energetic and more interesting than most other mediums could imagine.
You're absolutely 110%. So now let's get into this, baby. We got to get into this, baby. We got to get right into it. Let's talk first the Last Witch, right? This is that from the Last Witch, right?
Yes.
Tell me so much imagery. So let's start the Last Witch Volume 2. Now, this book is bubbling over with magic, heart, and high stakes. So how did it feel returning? So, please, Saoirse's world? Did I say
Saoirse.
Saoirse's, man. What is spelling Saoirse? Okay. You need to have identifying words in the back.
That's going to be in book 2. Book 2, we are going to have a pronunciation guide because Gaelic, Irish names and Irish words they're their own thing, my friend. They are their own.
The only thing I know how to ask for in Irish is an Irish car bomb drink, and let's go.
Do it, sláinte.
Oh, bro, bro, that shit is so good. So gets me lit after 2. Thank you guys for inventing that.
We try, but no. Okay, so yeah, The Last Witch. So I'll quickly back up. So yeah, so book 2 is going to start coming out June 18th. So tomorrow, for anybody who go to your comic shop, grab an issue. Book 1 came out in 2021. There's a story I'm sure we'll get into about that, but basically, it's like I like to say it's Irish Avatar: The Last Airbender, with just the right amount of child cannibalism.
Child cannibalism,
and it's for kids because it's the story of a 12-year-old girl named Saoirse. She's lived in medieval Ireland, and she desperately wants to be special. And so what she does is she decides to go on this journey as part of a dare with this other boy to find this crumbling remains of what was supposed to be once upon a time a witch's tower. But she does this on the one day you cannot go out, because it is the one day the Queen of the Witches is said to be traveling, looking for firewood and for children to eat. And what Saoirse finds in the woods is way more than she's ready for. And so basically, because of that, she finds out that she can use magic, which is incredible, right? Except the way she finds that out is because she has an encounter with a witch, and then the rest of the coven destroys her village, killing everybody, including her father, and leaving just her bratty little brother, and her cigar-smoking grandmother alive to help Saoirse, like Aang from The Last Airbender, learn these 4 elemental magics to defeat this coven of witches and to keep them from opening a door that will destroy the world. And so that's like you said, high stakes. And so book 1 was the first half of that journey. It was Saoirse. She faces down 3 members of the coven. She starts learning fire magic and water magic and air magic. And she also learns something pretty disturbing, which is that the magic is actually from the fairylands, from the place behind the door that these witches want to open. And it's sort of leaked into Ireland. And so every time Saoirse learns more magic or defeats a witch, she's getting more powerful. But the problem is that magic isn't for humans. It actually corrupts us. And so the more power she gets, the stronger she becomes, the more likely, the more risk there is that she's going to lose who she is and start to become one of them, a witch, maybe even the last witch. So it's kind of got a bit of a Breaking Bad subtext. And so book 2, issue number 1. So what we're seeing here is part of the end of issue number 1 of book 2.
Yeah, and I love this image. I want to say before we move forward, because it looks like an eyeball, a green eye, with a couple of spots on it would happen to be the characters. And I mean, I love this. Needs to be on a t-shirt right now. This is dope. Man.
Thank you, man. That's V Glass, who is just incredible.
Beautiful image.
So basically book 1 gives Saoirse, who has been dealing with a lot of intensity, it gives her a chance to sort of decompress. She plays with her little brother. She gets to laugh with this other guy that they've joined their team, this half fairy Hugh, who wants to help her keep the door closed because he kind of knows what's beyond it. And so you get a chance to see her again, to see her laughing and being the person that you fell in love with at the beginning of the series. And then her brother goes into the woods, and there's a wolf in there that's not really a wolf. And all of a sudden, Saoirse is confronted with a whole other coven of witches who are telling her that everything she knows about magic and her quest is wrong and that she is on the wrong path. And she doesn't handle it well, and it leads to a real problem that kind of is going to spark the second half of the book. And so what we're seeing here, we're seeing art from V Glass, who is absolutely incredible. I think
man, because I wanted to say that because the art is breathtaking. So how did that creative synergy with the artist elevate this volume?
Oh, I mean, the star of this book is V, right? Like, I think I've written a really good story. I really do. I think if you read the whole thing, the two books together, I really believe, that it is going to sit on people's shelves and they're going to be like, oh man, this is one I'm going to read over and over.
This is self porn. This is self porn. Say it, baby. It is some self porn, baby.
But V takes it to a whole other level. They are the star of the book. Their work is so incredible. They have this amazing ability to be almost Disney-like in terms of how their character designs are so clear and simplistic is not the right word, but they're not cluttered. They're very clear, very focused designs. And yet when you get into the background, into the world of The Last Witch, V does such amazing work with detail. It's almost Baroque, like this idea of you feel like if you could stick your head into any panel and look around, that you would be completely immersed in this world. And I think that's what makes the book work so well, is the characters, their ability to like nail acting is absolutely top notch. And their ability to make worlds, like to make you feel like you are living in the book, is incredible. And Natalia Nestorenko, who's the colorist, just from day one, they dropped in there. They sent us a few pages. She sent us a few pages, Natalia did. And V and I were like, what? It's cinematic. It's incredible. I am so blessed because, again, I think I wrote a pretty darn good story, but the art takes it to somewhere else. It's incredible. It's a great all ages book. If you have a young reader in your life who, loves adventure, get them this book. And if you are somebody who loves a fairy tale, get this book for yourself. I know this is very self-serving. I need to feed my children, but honestly, I presented this book to literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids doing school visits, and they all lean in. They're all I just got an email the other day from a parent saying, my kid doesn't read, but they've been waiting since you visited their school to get a copy of The Last Witch from the school library.
Oh, wow.
And they finally got it, and they are just like enraptured. And my kid has never really read a book before.
You need to talk to Boom Studios and figure out a way to maybe do a nice little giveaway for the kids in the school to get into the world. Create that future fan base, because it's going to be the next animated feature. And this is it right here, a nice little look.
Thank you.
At least the issue one right here, the announcement from Boom Studios. I mean, again, look at what a beautiful book, man. Look at that art. Look at that coloring. What's going on? Look at that panel work. I'm a fan of panel work.
Yes.
So, eye candy, things that make, tease the eye, creates that movement, makes it feel, like you said earlier, that cinematic, layer to it. And I like that, because when I see these different cuts and shapes, using geometry everywhere. You see, for who said you don't need geometry in life later in life? Using the right shapes and all within storytelling actually, does help elevate story. It does.
Yes, for sure. And that's one of the things I remember that Andy B really taught me in Kill Shakespeare, because he was so willing to take chances on page design. And it really taught me that it's not about being showy. It's about doing something. I mean, and sometimes it is showy, but that's not what it's about.
Why not show off the skill? But yeah, I mean, look at this page from the last. So you go from this, you see these geometric shapes in the panels, you see movement, you see what's going on, something crazy. But then you get, all of a sudden, you get this kind of big, nice wide angle shot, right? With two extra panels on top, so you can have this beautiful view of the sky as they see it. But then look at how the bottom works out. But again, it's all eye candy. It works well in the storytelling. I dig the shit out of it. And who's your letterer too, man? Because the letterer and the word bubbles do not disrespect any of the art space at all, and that's a talent in and of itself.
So Jim Campbell was the letterer in the first book, and Taylor Esposito is doing the second
Of
book.
course, Big Taylor, of course.
Big T. Push a T. No, he's
oh man, right. Who needs the clip? This is the real Pusha. Don't do nothing to this man. He said that play. The clips dropped a new track today, so come on now. If you like Pusha and the clips, they just dropped a new song. When you open, you'll be like, huh? And then you hear the flow, you're like, oh.
Like, all right. He knows what he's doing. I mean, he always has.
I love my man too. He's a hip hop guy. I was playing some music prior, and he was like, "Oh my god, I haven't heard that in years." We were geeking out in the geek room over hip hop.
We were.
There's a real just human being here that just happens to be an awesome creator that you guys need to be supporting right now. Man, look at this art, bro. Wow, look at this. Look at that panel work there too. Wow, bro, and it looks so animated. This shit right here makes me all right. I need to see this in a film. Animated.
That would be the dream. There's a Irish animation. They did the Book of Kells. They did, what was it called? Wolf Riders. I'm trying to remember what it was called.
Yes, Wolf Riders. Yes, Wolf Riders and the Book of Kells. Because I have an Irish friend. Big shout out to Tracy. She had asked me for that movie a while ago, and I happened to find it for her and point to her in the right place to get it. And then I was like, I was curious. I said, why did she ask for it? I was like, oh shit. Cool.
Yeah, that would be my dream. Would be for them to find this. That's the next figure. But yes, I mean, if you're picking up, I really do recommend to people to try to get book one first. It's in comic shops. You can order pretty easily online. You really do want to read that first before you get into book two. I mean, you can start book two. The storytelling is clear, but I think it's even stronger to go. So get the first issue tomorrow. Have it there waiting for you.
Folks.
Either pick up book one while you're in the comic shop, or get them to order it in for you. I promise you won't regret it. I really do think it's the kind of story that anybody can enjoy, and I really do. It works really well, I think, in the collected version, because it is. People often ask, you're writing for kids, how do you handle it? And I found nothing that I was doing intentionally, but looking now, stepping back and looking at the scripts, there was a natural things build slowly. It didn't get too intense too quickly. Then it's really intense. And then there's a little moment for everything to breathe again. And I think in a weird way, I was probably doing that because I remember when I was watching The Secret of Nim, there's a scene where Dragon the cat almost kills the hero. There's a scene where she has to go into this owl's lair, and they're so intense and they're so high pitched. I look back and I'm like, if the movie had been that the whole time, it would have been too much for me. It would have worn me out. Right? I couldn't have handled it. But then the movie does such a great job of having, there's the Jeremy, the Crow character, who brings in the humor, and it gives you these great moments to laugh. And so when you get into the intense parts again, you're ready. You've been charged up with enough positive energy that you're ready to spend it all to survive this next scary scene. And that's kind of what happens in The Last Witch. You build up your positive energy, you get some great humor, some really nice family stuff. I mean, I think so. Yeah. And then you get to spend all that good energy trying to survive this next witch.
Yeah, that reminds me of the never-ending story. That's how I felt. It was a ride like that. It was fun. It was great. It was heartbreak. It was moments that there's a cosplayer that does out there that does the horse scene. He carries the horse head and he just puts it on the ground. And he's dressed like Homie. They're trying to put it out. I mean, why are you trying to do this to old people? Why are you trying to shock us and remind us I'm gonna beat you up if I ever see you? I swear to God, stop doing this to me.
That was like the horse in this quicksand. You're just like, I mean, that. And I hope I have a moment kind of similar to that in The Last Witch, because that was one of the moments where I'm like, no, this is not okay. This is not how these stories, because you're used to as a kid, people give you safe stuff where everything always ends up okay. And then when you read Roald Dahl or you see something like this and things are not always okay, you have moments where you're like, no, that's not right. The story.
That's not what I expected. What the hell?
It's like Fred, it's like Fred Savage talking to his grandfather and the princesses, being like, no, grandfather, that's not how the story goes.
Yeah.
That's not how it goes. All right, well, I'll close it if you don't want to know. No, okay, keep reading, but that's not how it goes. And I think that's important. I think it's important to have stories that, especially for, all ages, it's important to have stories that sometimes push you past your comfort zone, but in a respectful and in a controlled way, right? That's what I hope. Right. That's for the reader to judge.
But you know what? we're gonna get that, not just from this project, but another project we're about to talk about. So before I move on to that next one, this is the one right here for us. You can even go check out Boom Studios, because that's where it's coming out. The Last Witch, Blood, Betrayal. Go check it out. Now it's dropping mañana. Go to your favorite LCS. If they did not stock it, I need you to grab your comic book retailer but a throat right here. Yo, you better get me that book right now. And that's that, all right? This is the fire book. I do not encourage violence. That's just a joke. Hate mail.
You just say to him, I've heard it's the best all ages comic adventure of the year. That's what I heard from the guy who wrote it. So he might be full of shit, but that's what I heard.
No, I'm not full of shit, because it is. I mean, did you see that artwork? Come on. Now we're gonna get into the next one over here. I need to learn about this, because you putting me the fuck on. All right, so I really gotta understand here. So you're tackling what, from what I understand, is a legend.
Yes.
And Fela Kuti. I hope I said that right.
Fela Kuti.
So how did you approach writing a man who was both revolutionary and controversial? I mean, and then I could see your journalistic side really kind of taking shine here.
I mean, so I'll take a step back. So the Fela. So let me first contextualize who Fela Kuti is. So Fela Kuti is a Nigerian musician. He is the father of Afrobeat. He's a guy that Miles Davis called the future of music.
Which he was right.
Activist. But the best way for me to kind of tell you who he is, for those of you who've never heard of the man, is think of him as the Bob Marley of Africa. If Bob Marley put out 55 plus records, married 28 women, got arrested 200 times, and started his own country. What that Fela did, right? So that's who
married 20. Yo, bro,
27 in one day.
What?
And when they asked him, when they said to Fela, you just married 27 women. Are you going to consummate your marriage with all 27 women tonight? Fela laughed and he said, no, of course not. I married 27 women, not 7. So yeah, Fela was he was a trip. He was a guy who, and it's an interesting guy, right? Because he's a guy who, you look at his career, he ended up, he kind of found his political, because he was hugely political. He was we kind of pitched him as like, one of the original Black Lives Matters. He was a guy who was fighting against corruption and class and robber baron capitalism in Nigeria. He was calling out names of all the leaders of the military government that would have a coup, and now they would be in charge. And Fela would sing a song telling you why this guy was awful. It's one of the reasons he was arrested 200 times.
200 times.
200 times. That's he claims 200 times. He claims 200 times.
Well, that's the claim one.
But the way he got politicized was actually coming to the United States. So there's a funny story pretty early in the book where Fela is trying to make his music, because he realized early on he loved jazz, but he also loved traditional, high life and African music, and he was trying to create something new. And so he there's this funny story where he tells everybody in Nigeria that James Brown is playing his music in the United States, and that he has become a minor star in the United States because all these musicians are playing his stuff. Okay. But he can't get over to the States. He can't make money on it. And if only somebody would help him do a tour in the United States, they'd all get rich.
Yeah,
it's not really true, this whole thing about James Brown playing his music. And so, but Fela ends up kind of tricking this tour company into giving him a tour. Except they kind of fuck him over, is when he lands in the States, they're not there. They haven't booked anything for him. They don't have a hotel for him. They don't have any shows for him. So he's like, those fuckers that I tricked screwed me. So he ends up barnstorming around the United States, and he ends up basically penniless in Los Angeles, where he meets this woman, Sandra Isidore, who is involved with the Black Panthers. And she's the one who changes his life politically. Because until that point, Fela is talking about, he famously talks about how the problem with Africa is Africans. And he's like, look at Europe. It works. White people. Look at North America. Works. White people. So he's telling this to this Black Panther. And she, she's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Are you wilding right now?
So she hands him Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey. She hands him all these, great thinkers. And Fela goes and reads these books, and it changes his life because he suddenly becomes aware that in Nigeria, they've been so colonized by the British that they had been colonized into believing that there was something wrong with them as Africans.
That their oppressors were the good guys and your own people were the enemy.
Right. And it's a story as old as time, right? This is the hell of people being oppressed. Is the whole game is teaching them that there's something wrong with them, and that's why they deserve to be oppressed. And if they were only somehow intrinsically better, so
if only you could be humanized, because that's the Puerto Rican story too. Because again, exactly. Puerto Rican history, and when after the Spanish-American War, when America took over Puerto Rico, it was not with permission because we were about to get our freedom from Spain. But the USA said no, walked into the country, said no, you're going to talk English now. We're going to instill a governor that doesn't even know Spanish. I mean, and then things happened to our people at that point in time, unfortunately.
Yeah. And this is why the Fela story is so universal, because he is talking about, even though he's doing it through the lens of what's happening specifically in Nigeria, it's talking about colonialism. It's talking about class.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
It's just a little groove for us. He's talking about, unchecked capitalism and class. But he's doing it all it sounds like it's a very heavy book, and it is a heavy book in a way, but it is also hilarious because Fela is your classic sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
It sounds it. Who the hell marries that many women in a day? It's so fucking insane. Like, bro, listen, you're gonna be looking. Remember that episode when Al Bundy was trying to get when his family member had died, and if somebody has an heir, and his name. So he kept, messing with Peggy to the point that he got white hair and was in a wheelchair.
Yeah,
that's how I would look with that many women by the end of just maybe a week.
Well, and the interesting thing about that whole story is, at the first glance, you're like, whoa, what is this kind of weird misogynistic bullshit, right? But the reason he was marrying these women, we kind of have an argument in the book. There are some people who argued Fela was doing it to prove to people, I'm a big man, right? Traditional African, beliefs, you can have many wives, I can support all these women, I'm powerful, I'm important. But it was also because they were about to try to do a tour in Ghana, which is next door to Nigeria. At that point in Nigeria, Fela was public enemy number one. The government literally would drive tanks up to where he was supposed to perform.
What?
And be like, you can go to you can go to this concert, but we'll shoot you.
I gotta hear this stuff. I gotta read this story, man. You are blowing my mind right now.
Yeah, and so he originally, the reason he married all these women was because it was illegal for unmarried women to cross the border into this other country. So by marrying them all, they could now go on the tour, earn their money, earn their livelihood, pay for their kids, do all that shit.
Wow.
So and so both are true. On one level, Fela probably, he was self-aggrandizing. He was trying to show everybody how fucking important he was because he'd just taken a big loss, right? He couldn't perform anymore. But on the other hand, he legitimately were like, these women, they've been through as much as I have. They've been, at one point, 1,000 members of the government stormed his country, his commune. That was just before this happens.
What?
They beat the shit out of everybody. They do all the unspeakable things you could ever imagine that soldiers could do to women in conflict. They do that. They take Fela's mom, who helped negotiate Nigeria's independence from England. She was in the room. They took her. She was in her 70s. She was called the mother of Nigeria. They threw her out of a second floor window.
What the fuck? You getting me so angry right now, this story.
They beat Fela. He thinks his spirit has left his body, right? So these women had gone through horror, and Fela was like, "No, man, we're not leaving them behind in Nigeria and hiring new women. We're bringing my queens with me." And so it's just he's such a complicated figure. He's funny, he's profane, he's an asshole, he's selfish, he's generous. He is a really, and this whole book came together. As some of you may notice, if you're watching this, I do not have the traditional look of a Nigerian. I am, in point of fact, not Nigerian. But the co-creator of this
book... Wait. Have you not done the DNA thing? I mean, maybe you can't do it anymore because now they're selling our data, but you never did it? Because it was funny. My ex-wife came out and talking about, hey, I just found out she did it. I never did it. She said, hey, they tell me that I'm 2% Nigerian. I said, oh, shit, there you go. Maybe, who knows?
I mean, maybe I'm West African in me. I mean, who knows, right?
You never know. It's all part of our culture. I mean, right? Isn't that supposedly our birth homes?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not mad if I am, man. Like I'll take that. But the reason we kind of put this book together is because Jibola Fagbamie, who's my good buddy, who's a Nigerian Canadian, he's a fine artist. He's the artist for this book, and he wanted to tell Fela's story. And when he originally pitched it to me, he pitched kind of a very small thing around that raid I just told you about, the 1,000 soldiers. It was all based on a song Fela sung called Zombie. Anybody listening to this and you want to get into Fela, Zombie is the first track to listen to. It's really accessible and it tells you what he's up to. Zombie was basically Fela calling out the entire military in Nigeria and that soldiers were nothing but zombies. And Nigeria is not unlike the States. It is very militarized. Most people know somebody who was in the military. They have family members in the military. It was a big flex. But most people were like, yeah, man, like, even though I love my brother or my cousin who's in the military, I'm fucking terrified of our military because of what it does to us in the streets. But it was the thing that made them send 1,000 soldiers to burn his commune down. And and so that was what my buddy Jibola wanted to tell. And then the more he was telling me about it, I knew a little bit of Fela. I worked in Ghana as a journalist for about 8 months. I worked there, so I had a bit of insight into the West African world. And the more, though, I was doing the research, like you were saying, how do you do this kind of book? You do a shit ton of research. The more I was like, Jibola, Fela's story is so big. It's so crazy. Like, you have to do the whole story. You got to do a whole story about it. Like, you're not, it would be a shame to spend this much time and not let people know everything about this guy. And so that's when Jibola came back to me a couple of weeks later and was like, we got to work together on this. And actually, if you want to show some more images,
you're not playing, because that's 384 pages of that baby right there, man. I mean,
yeah, no, it is an epic. It is very funny at times, and but it's the kind of book you don't need to know anything about Nigeria or Fela Kuti going into this. All this stuff is stuff you can learn from the book. You will be able to pick it up. You will be able to learn more about it. If you want to show a little bit more art from it, you can go to, we've got a website. It's felagraphicnovel.com.
Send me that in the private chat, and I'll go right there right now and make sure people can have a look at that baby, before we leave, of course. I'm digging what you're doing. This is a history lesson, the type that we need sometimes, and learn about, these other heroes that are not spoken about in our schools or anything like that, which is sad, I think, because again, we have so many heroes in the world that have done stuff, man, and why can't we celebrate them? Why can't we show them that love? I mean, look at this baby right here. Epa. Oh man, look at that. Fela Kuti. The Bob Moya. Oh man. Look at that. Who's this colorist? Who's the artist?
That's all Jibola. That's all Jibola Fagbamie. Fine artist by trade. He does some incredible. He does incredible work. As a fine artist, and this is a labor of love. Like, we worked on this book we worked on it for about 10 years. From the first time we sat down and started seriously talking about how to organize it, to we're just sending the final print to the publishers now. Like, it's all been put together. There's Jibola, there's my man, there's him. He chose that other picture of me. That's I don't know why. I heard shocked. Somebody's about to, I don't know what's happening in that picture.
Well, you definitely have the service shirt on.
I do. We were in Paris. They actually did there was a really cool exhibit on Fela and his music at the Paris Philharmonic. So we were there.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, boy. You put. I cannot listen. Not that I want this podcast to be over, because I'm digging the energy and the knowledge that you're bestowing upon me. But I'm really gonna start digging in after this. I need to know who this man. You said I love Afrobeat. So now to be taught the granddaddy, and then not just that, but being a freedom fighter, if you will.
Yeah, no,
even more through music and all. Thank you. So, what compelled you to tell his story, bro?
I mean, it was Chibola coming to me, and he had like I said, he had this idea for this much smaller, like maybe a 30-page comic that he wanted to do, and and he was like, hey, look, what do you know about Fela? And I know a little bit, so I dug in more, and there's just story after story after story, which are all funny. Like I know we're running out of time, so I'm just going to tell you. At one point, Fela Kuti had the most expensive shit in the history of Nigeria. And he then wrote a song about it called Expensive Shit. That story is 100% in the book. That story is 100% in the book. All right,
so let's talk about this. If Fela himself reads this book, right, or read this book, what would you hope he'd say? And what do you fear he'd say?
I mean, I really hope that he would be like, we've talked to the family about it. I really hope that he would look at it and be like, yeah, you got it, right? Like you showed me as who I was. I think he might have some, he would probably argue a little bit of some of the portrayal, but I honestly think like Fela was pretty good at like when he made about it, being able to acknowledge where sometimes he might have made mistakes or been wrong. And we wanted to present him as a flawed person, right? It was important, especially important for Chibola, who made a really interesting point when we first started this project. He's like, so much of how we present Africa, Africans, Black Americans, the diaspora, is through this lens of survival and this ability to withstand suffering, right? Usually it's through the conversation around slavery, but also through like the poverty that infects so many Black neighborhoods. And he's like, it's true. The Black community uses humor and music and joy as a weapon to fight against all these things. But it's this very limiting picture of Black, of being Black, right? And like he really drove to me this idea of like, Black excellence is one thing, but just Black everydayness of just being someone who gets to be an asshole and clever and a pain in the ass and a lover and a father, and like that and if it was really important for us to show Fela as a real, true 360-degree person who in some ways he is so progressive. Like so much of what he talks about in terms of class and capitalism, like you ask me why I'm doing this book, I'm like, because I believe that shit too. I think he's 100% right about some of the biggest problems we have in our society and how we could fix them if we could somehow just distribute income a little more fairly. I'm not against people being rich.
It's not going to happen because, again, unless the people are
we need the revolution now.
Powerful enough.
We need the revolution, right?
Up, make it happen. Yeah, listen. Yeah.
So this is our little brick in that wall.
But let's just say that though. Isn't there in fact a statement? Power to the people, right? So if we really want to change, why are we so fearful to make the change? Because I think that's really what it is. Like there are a few that speak out, but even with those that few, when you can empower so many, it is fear. And what is that fear? What is it that stops us from firing? Are we afraid of the change that we speak of? What is it? It's just, listen, we don't know, right? If you feel this is what it is, if the energy is with you, if the energy is on the majority, let's just make it fucking happen. That's it. No more fucking fear. Make it effing happen.
I know we're running to the end of the time, but I think what you just said was really prescient. And I think that is the thing. Like you look at culture, and again, I'm a Canadian. I've spent most of my life, looking down across the board at the States and loving so much about the United States. But more and more in the last, say, 10, 15 years, you're seeing, in my eyes, this like kind of insidious, effed up part of American culture, which is designed to create fear. It is. And honestly, I think there's a chunk of American culture that is designed to allow violence to occur so that fear is ever present.
Yes.
And that is, and I think honestly, and I think a big thing, I'm living in Europe right now, and Europe has its problems just like anywhere else. But I do think a huge part of it, and Canadians love to joke about this all the time, but a huge part of it, honestly, it's universal healthcare. It's the fact that I know if tomorrow, God forbid, I got cancer, my family is not going bankrupt.
Yeah.
Right? I've worked hard. I'm a blue-collar dude. I've worked hard my whole life.
And me, I'll get dropped tomorrow.
I don't have to worry about my insurance company.
I'll get dropped tomorrow if they find out, right?
Yeah. And so honestly, for me, I think that's a huge part, because when you're not terrified that at any moment, just because your freaking body betrays you, that all of a sudden everything you've worked your whole life for is gone, we don't have that fear. We have other fears, but we don't have that fear. And I think it's fundamental in terms of why there is so much fear in your country, is because there is a real life chance that you could lose everything because your doctor tells you he found something on a scan. Yeah. And that just to me is morally wrong. It's just morally wrong.
And unless you're lucky enough to have family that could even help you, you're gonna be kind of
screwed.
Yeah,
you're screwed. That to me is morally wrong. That's morally wrong.
It is.
No,
it is. On that side, I could definitely agree. There's so much better that we could all do. And again, this is not the type of podcast we're talking comments, but but Fela over here is inspiring this right now, because we see his fight, right? He did it, and I love how you use that. It's Fela. Music is the weapon, because you know what? Music is, like math, a universal language.
Yes, it is.
It's a geometry, it's a rhythm, it's soulful. And if you get it, if you allow to open yourself up, you're gonna understand the sentiment and understand the struggle, and maybe, just maybe, you want to be able to stand up like Fela too. More power. Thank you so much for teaching me on this, and I cannot wait now, Conor, to read this book. Mi gente, if you're excited to follow his projects that are going live, because it's two big ones, baby. Boom Studios, the last of which Blood Betrayal. Okay, you gotta get that. Boom Studios gonna be live mañana. All right, but right here on Amazon is a Fela music weapon. All right, you gotta check this one out. Now, this one's not gonna be available until October 7th, but it's on pre-order now, baby. On Amazon.
Pre-order, baby.
All right. So just make it happen. Look, right there, it says it right there, baby. Pre-order now. So make sure you secure your copy. I know you got your tax returns now, even now. Don't be bullshitting me. So spend some money and support wonderful independent creators. Harper Collins is dropping this book right here. So, yeah, look, 60 B's get delivered to your house. For real, beautiful. Get it done right now. This is historical. Over 300 pages of that shelf porn, boy.
It is.
Make it happen. It is.
That's the book. This is the book you hand to your friend who's like, I don't get graphic novels. I don't get comics. This is
shut up here. Shut the fuck up and read this.
Like Contract to God. I mean, I'm not saying our book is as good as those. I mean, it's a very good book, but this is that kind of book.
Yeah, that you can hand to somebody. Stop it. Don't you?
I'm not saying. That's up to the readers to decide.
I already feel it. I feel it's gonna be great energy. So again, check out both projects. Both projects are gonna be wonderful. You can follow my big homie also on Instagram at The Real Conor, and that's Conor with one N. Okay,
yes, sir.
CONOR, or one N. Also on X at Conor McCreery. That's right. That's MCCREERY. And also on Facebook with a dot, Conor.McCreery. All right, check him out on Facebook. And of course, check out his website too. That killshakespeare.com, man. You can see the work he did prior and all. That's the big homer. Conor, any last words for the fans out there? Why should they be picking up both these books?
Because they're great stories, and you're gonna love reading them. And I have to end it on just one last note, which is you better watch your step.
Wepa, baga tu sepa! This is our mega Conor McCreery. Hasta la próxima, mi gente. You know what it is. Thank you for listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. If you like the content, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, please visit comiccrusaders.shop and our extended podcast family over at undercovercapes.com. And also, make sure to download the Comic Crusaders app on the Google Play Store today.